Right guys, right, in this video I'm going to go over how I do my scenery, as I'm currently trying to get all my scenery finished for battle reports and stuff. I'm not going to go into how I've constructed the scenery because it is literally standard GW scenery. There was maybe one or two boxes gone into this piece, but nevertheless it is just bog standard Games Workshop scenery. How I do my construct my scenery to a basic standard really is the fact that I usually think of a like if it was a piece of a ruined building taken from a picture, so I usually try to have it as like a theme it, so what's actually happened to the building. So this building is obviously a massive hole in the side of the building here, and I've got a very old forge or drop pod that I had lying around, and I never came around to using it at all. So obviously the drop pods come through the atmosphere. It's either been shot or shot down, or the reverse thrusters haven't worked properly and it's come crashing through the building, and as it's deployed the marine's already dead inside. So I've got one dead marine there and another dead marine there. So like I say, it's come down, crashed, every marine's died, and instead of having the drop pod removed because it is a war zone, it's just been left there, and the marines have just been pretty much left to rot. The building itself has had some work done on it, so people are able to get around it. So I've actually put wooden beams here, one small one there. I've got a wooden strut just to keep it a bit more solid. But how I glued them together is just literally super glue, and I glued it to the model using either super glue or a glue gun or any other type of glue that obviously sets hard. I've also put electrics in the building, which is what this is here. Obviously I've not bothered spraying the bottom of it because you're not going to see that anyway. Yeah, all the electrics run. I'll spin it around. You can't actually see it on here because I've put blue tack over the lights, so when I spray it you don't get any spray paint on the lights. So I've obviously got one there, 2, 3, 4 on that side, and on this side I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and obviously that's the corner one as well. But obviously when I switch them on, all the lights will come up, so it will look like, just giving the building itself a little bit more detail. All the wires, let's see if I can see the wires in here. Yeah, as you see, all the wires are actually all glued underneath the actual floor section for each level. So it's just basically to keep them out of the way, pretty much out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. That if you want to see them, you will obviously get on your, look down and you will see the wires. There's nothing you can do to hide the wires unless you have, I don't know, like a remote wires. The only problem I have with doing the lights really is hiding the power unit. So for this one, what I've done is I've actually built almost like a little level, like a little metal grid level with or step, should I say, with an ammo point on it. This bit around the side is just literally wire meshing that you can get from, I got it from Halfords in the UK. I think it's car repair kit, like a wire mesh for a car repair kit for bodywork, and I've just basically done that around the side. So obviously when it sits down, obviously the power pack will go in there, and then it will sit like literally just nicely in there. And what I've done is I've done a little groove there, so the wires can obviously come through there. So how this is going to go is I'll thread the wire through there. This is obviously when it's painted. I don't know whether I'm going to glue it down or what yet. So I'll just kind of force it there, because it's obviously really thin wire. It does bend, which is quite handy at times. So yeah, that's basically how it's going to go. I've done a little step here to go over the rubble. So yeah, so that's basically how it's going to sit. And obviously when it's all switched on, yeah, it'll look quite nice really. But obviously it's a lot easier to paint without that on it at the minute. These little lights I got off eBay. Quickly get it set. There we go. Yeah, lights for fun. I got them off eBay. It's basically Christmas lights. You get 10 lights on a strip. You can actually cut the lights off so you can have less than 10. The only downside to that is the fact that you've if you're cutting 4 lights off the wire, you're only going to have obviously 6 lights that you're able to work, but the other 4 lights you're not able to use at all. They're pretty much ruined then, so you end up binning them. So just be careful when you come to cut them, because if you go wrong, you've basically lost that extra light, or however you want to cut it, really, however you want to work it. So yeah, there from eBay, just search. I think I searched Christmas fairy lights, 10 Christmas fairy lights, and that's what it came up with. That's a UK company, so I wasn't waiting too long for them. I think they were about £1.50, £2 free postage. I ordered about 5 or 10 lots of them, because it worked out cheaper to get more than one. So yes, that's basically the construction of the building. I have mounted it on a bit of wood. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube not using wood, just literally placing the scenery down, which works really well. But I like to mount it on a piece of wood for the simple fact that it's a bit sturdier. Obviously, if it's glued down, if it's glued down to the wood here, it's sturdier. It's not going to break as easy. Also, pretty much all buildings in the 41st millennium are square. So obviously, as you can see, the whole building is on a square bit of wood. The wood itself is literally really, really thin plyboard. Let me see if I can just quickly find a piece. Yeah, really, really thin plyboard. I think it's about 3mm, maybe 2mm. It's rough one side and it's really smooth another side. You can glue your stuff on top. Doesn't matter which way really. You can glue it on top of the rough edge if you want, or on top of the smooth edge. I think I glued mine on top of the smooth edge. So the rough edge just on a gamer mat just gives it that little bit of extra, extra hold really. I think I got that from B&Q. You can get it from eBay or whatever as well. Probably cheaper, but I was at B&Q at the time. I think it was quite cheap actually. I think it was about £4 a sheet, and the sheets were 2x4 sheets. So I've literally got plenty left. So that's that, and I shall go on to the paints. Right, paint wise, there are a few. I will warn you. Some of the paints that I use are Games Workshop don't do anymore. So there's I think there's a colour conversion chart on Google, like Games Workshop colours, and you can convert them from the old colours to the new colours. So you just do it that way. I'll start with the paints that I use for the actual building itself. So I've got the base colours wise, Eshen Grey. I've got a couple of pots of Eshen Grey for the simple fact that the majority of the building will be grey, because it is a concrete building. It's not like a Mechanicus building, which is usually made of metal. And then building up from the grey, we've got Codex Grey, Fortress Grey, and I've got a Chaos Black, which I think is called a Badham Black now, from what I remember. Having the blacks there is just quite handy, really. We'll do paints now that I use for some interior stuff and just random bits and bobs. I've got Snakebite Leather, which is an old paint. I don't quite know what the new one of that's called. We've got Sunburst Yellow. Again, it's a very old paint. You can tell by the old pots. People that have been into the hobby for more than 15 years will either have some of these pots lying around, or will definitely remember these pots. Blood Red, it was quite a handy one to have. And then I've got Ushabti Bone, which is I think the old bleach bone. And then I've got the old foundation paints. I don't actually know if they do the foundation paints anymore, but I managed to get a load of these before I think they got discontinued. I can't remember what they're called now. I've got Tausept Orca, Kashchan Brown, and Mechanite Red. The reason why I've got these random colours, people might be thinking, why the hell would things be coloured like this? I've got reds and stuff for wires, cables, buttons in the building. Yellows for the same. The browns will be for the wood, where the planks and stuff are. And then for all the metals, and obviously got metal, bronze, brass, steel, gold. That can be in buildings in the 41st millennium. I've got a few paints here for that, and I've got an old Tin Bits. Again, I don't know what this is called now. I don't even know whether they do it anymore. It's a really, really good colour. Luckily, I've got about 4 or 5 pots of this, and I use this quite regular, so I'm dreading the fact that when I run out of it. Dwarf bronze. Then we've got lead belcher, which I think is the old bolt gun metal. Chainmail. And mithril silver. And then for the golds and stuff, I've got burnished gold and shining gold. Again, these are really old pots. I want to use all the old stuff. The new stuff's quite good actually, and some of the new paints actually look quite nice. So I want to use all these old paints before they go completely kaput on me, pretty much. Inks and washes, there's not many because it's a building. I'll do a lot of the weathering with 1, maybe 2 inks. So what I've got here is a brown ink. I will use that to stain the wood. Obviously I'll start from a dark brown colour, which will be the foundation, and then ink it, and then maybe just dry brush a lighter brown, just to give it a little bit more of a weathered stained effect. A very old armour wash, which is almost like a Nuln Oil, but it's not, it's actually darker than Nuln Oil. And I have actually got a Nuln Oil as well, because the armour wash works really well for like footing, obviously where people have been walking and stuff. So on the levels, that go actually around the inside of the building, it's a lot darker, but it still shows up a lot of the detail. And I've got the Nuln Oil for the when I paint stuff. What's it called? Lead belcher. Works really well because it shades it, but it's not too dark. Whereas the armour wash is actually a lot darker. And then for weathering, I've gone for a non-Games Workshop paint. It's called Streaking Grime, and that's from a company called AK Interactive. You can get this from eBay, or you can get it from AK Interactive website itself. I think I got this off eBay. Now this is really, really good. I'd definitely recommend having a play with it before you use it. It is really, really good stuff. The only downside to it is you have to have some terps to streak it, because how it works is you paint it on the corner of something to streak it. I will show you. You paint it onto a corner or something to streak it. You let it dry, and then you use terps. This is basically an old glue pot, plastic glue pot that I've tipped a load of terps into. And you use your brush, and you stroke your brush down the dry AK Interactive stuff. And as you're streaking it down, it actually re-wets the pigment of the paint and drags it, but it doesn't take it away. It doesn't actually lift it from the model, so it's actually, it's really, really good stuff. I definitely recommend getting the AK Interactive stuff if you're doing scenery, and it's really good for things like weathering tanks, or if you're doing like a Nurgle Death Guard army, things like that, or even if you don't do Warhammer 40,000, if you're doing bolt action or Flames of War. I think it's called Flames of War, things like that. It's really good for weathering your tanks, for griming up your tanks and streaking your tanks with muck and grime and things like that. So it is really, really good stuff. So that'll be the paints and stuff that I'll be using. I shall start painting the model. Right, as you can see here, I'm obviously going to start doing the base layers. How obviously you start off doing the stuff that's deepest in the model. So obviously all the concrete that's inside, inside all the crevices and things like. There's no point painting the metal first, because you painting the actual concrete that's on the inside, you're going to get the grey on top of the metal. So there's actually no point painting the metal stuff first. So you're best off painting all your base colours. So I usually do all of the concrete on the model first, as in base coat it and then dry brush it, and then I don't weather it. I obviously leave the weather until literally right at the last thing. So the base layer, I'm going to use the Eshin Grey, and I've got a load of it mixed up on my palette. But the reason why I've got a load of it is for the simple fact that a lot of the model is obviously going to be grey, and if there's any left, I will just paint it on the base, because the base of it will be, the base coat of the base will be Eshin Grey as well, to go with my gaming mat. So obviously all you're doing is literally just painting all of the concrete in the model, or pretty much the entire model really. And luckily I have, like I say, I blue tacked all of the lights. Obviously I would be getting paint all over the lights now, so I'm going to leave the blue tack on them. It looks a bit like black tack at the minute, and look, it's all obviously all sprayed. And you just want to get in all of the cracks and crevices of the model with the Eshin Grey. All around the windows, all around the window frames, the insides of the windows, like the inside edging. So yeah, all across there, right in that deep pit. I'm only going to paint this, obviously record painting this panel, so I put recording the whole lot. So yeah, so pretty much even though there's this tiny little bit of black shown through it, that's fine. I'll just give like the model itself a little bit of extra depth. So yeah, so that'll be one panel done, and I've got to do the entire model. So hopefully I shall cut back to when it's all done. Okay, with all that Eshin Grey done on the building, we're going to go into the first lot of dry brushing highlights, and we're going to be using the Codex Grey. All I'll do is just put a little bit on my palette here, and I'm using a large dry brush. So just getting a little bit on the brush. I'll show you how to do a bit of dry brushing. If you don't already know how to do it, hopefully this will give you some good tips. If you already know how to do it, then just refreshing your memory, I suppose. Okay, once you've got a little bit on your brush, just use a little bit of cloth here and wipe it off. Not all of it, just enough. So it's roughly around that much. Usually test it on your hand as well. So yeah, that's probably quite good actually. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. Right, and then when you're dry brushing, you're going against the grain. Against the grain of the model. So obviously, because all the struts and stuff are going down, pretty much most 40k stuff is linear anyway, rather than circle or anything. So yeah, all the struts go down. So you want to be going crossways. So all you're doing is you're literally like flicking the model over the raised areas. So if I do like this corner panel here, just literally like covering the highlighted areas. You don't want to stay on one area for too long, otherwise it'll be too light. And all the brush is doing is, because the brush is actually skimming over the top of the model, you'll be hitting all the raised areas. You won't be getting any of the areas that are sunken in. Basically, that's how you're giving it a like a very quick, simple, and effective highlight. I don't usually dry brush models. I usually prefer to highlight models, but scenery and things, it works really well. Because it is it's literally such a large area. So I'll just quickly run around the front of this model. If you like to have the areas a little bit lighter, just go back to the area and give it another go over really with a brush. If you think your brush is running out, just get a little bit more paint on your brush, wipe it off, and then go again. So I'll do the rest of this model, and I'll show you what it's like once it's completely highlighted. Right, that's the light grey done. The reason why I've done a little bit of a light grey, I've done some of my buildings just with the Codex Grey. The reason why I've decided to do this one with a very small amount of Fortress Grey over the top is just to give it a different shade. Otherwise, all the buildings on the board just look uniform, and I don't particularly want to do that. I want some of the buildings to look slightly different, slightly more weathered than others. I mean, this one could have possibly been a new building constructed, whereas other ones could have been slightly old, so it'll just be a little bit more weathered. I didn't bother doing the inside with the Fortress Grey. I probably did the edges. Let's get a better angle here. I did the edges like around this part. Same here around this part. Just because obviously it's where the blasts would have been, but we'll come back to them bits later. Right, this next bit we're going to do the bolt gun metal or lead belcher, depending on which one you've which paint you've got. And as simple as it is, I'm going to use a large brush because it's a fairly big brush and you still keep some of the detail on it. I'm literally going to be painting the floor panels with the large brush, and it's literally just a case of slapping it on. Obviously getting it into all of the grates, all of the grain of the flooring. A bit more there. Yeah, all the grates, the hatch, everything really can be lead belt should be painted with the silver. Because obviously we're not going to leave it like this. We are going to ink it to give it a little bit more detail, a little bit more depth. When it comes to obviously painting this line, I usually just like to go up to around about there. I don't know if you can see it there. Yeah, around about there. So I'll quickly just do this one panel. There is other bits of metal which I'll be doing on the model, which I will quickly show you. And that will be these struts, these metal struts here. So obviously this one that goes down, this one that will go down, this one, basically all these metal struts that will connect the concrete, like the concrete sheets to each other. Obviously this one here, this corner, and I will paint them all as well as the flooring on the inside. I may also paint these little, I suppose there could be some form of ventilation for the building, so I will paint these as well. I know there's quite a few of them, so it's quite tedious and it's quite fiddly. But all of these are going to be metal now because I've done the concrete. Like I say, I'll be doing these metal bits because I've not got any fear of getting any of the grey on these bits. So yeah, so I shall come back to you as soon as I've done these bits. Right, we've done all the bulk gun metal or the lead belcher, whichever paint you've got. As you can see, I've done all the struts here and here. I've also done the chains and these little bits here, these little boxes, obviously for vents or whatever. I've also done all the wires, basically for the like the supports, almost like reinforced steel. Painted all them silver as well, obviously. All the flooring, all floors. This one, obviously this one, and the one on top. That's all bulk gun metal as well. I've also done this panel inside. I was going to leave it like a concrete effect, but the fact that it's actually like riveted on, I thought to myself, well, I might as well paint that bit in there, and then I'll weather that accordingly. So yeah, so that was that little fiddly bit done. Next, I'm going to be doing like the brass, gold, and bronze bits. Now these bits will basically be, let's see if I get a better look here, obviously around the door frame, so these little winged things, almost like dead cherubs. We'll be painting all of them. Yeah, they'll all get a good coat of the tin bits. The reason why I use tin bits first is because gold going straight on top of this turns out a bit crap. You have to do a couple of layers, so rather than do like 3 or 4 layers, I just do the tin bits first, and it turns out really nice. Gives it quite a strong effect, the gold, and the same for the dwarf bronze as well. It's always nice to start off with this tin bits first. I'll do the edge of this doorway as well. So obviously running my brush obviously just right around the edge. I'm using a standard brush here. I'm using an old standard brush. Usually Games Workshop brushes, you get about a good, I don't know, maybe a good 60 to 70 models out of them before they start to fray like this one. But I usually like to keep all my brushes until they are completely knackered, basically, for scenery and for blotting things, and they're also good for my kids. I mean, my kids are quite young at the minute, but I am slowly teaching them things for painting, things like that, just getting them used to a bit of hand-to-eye coordination. So yeah, so I shall be painting all of that. Also, the best things to be painting for gold and things were these little, I suppose they're almost like a flower decoration, or I don't know really, a wing or something like that. I like to paint them just to break up all the grey. So yeah, I'll be painting all them, bolt gun, metal as well. I'd paint the window frames. You could paint the window frames, you could leave them. You might even, excuse me, you might even want to paint them bolt gun possibly. I might actually go over and paint them bolt gun maybe. I'm not quite decided on what I want to do for them. I don't want to put too much colour into the building because it'll just look too busy. And obviously it is only you know, a building, even though it's for decoration. Maybe a bit of gold room there, maybe. I don't know. We'll see what we do after that. Bronze bits as well. I'd probably recommend doing would be the points on top. Obviously these points here. Probably paint these bronze, bolt gun metal, sorry, and then bronze. Even though the edges are already done, you just have to repaint them. It's just hazards from dry brushing, really. So yeah. Okay, we've done the all the tin bits on the building now. Obviously, decided to do the edges of the window frame. I think it actually cuts it out a little bit more. It makes the windows stand out a little bit. Like I say, I've done the like the skeletal cherubs on the door frame. Obviously, wanted the door frame to stand out a lot more, a lot better. Yeah, done these ones around the corner as well. I've also decided to do the edges, like these top corners of these vents. Obviously, they'll be inking them soon, so they'll be able to see them a little bit better. Just because they I think this just sets them out a little bit more, really, than it just being completely grey. So yeah, so the next thing we're going to be base coating now will probably be this bit here for skulls. On one piece of terrain I've done, which is more of a mechanicum building, I've actually had all the skulls grey, so more like a cast of like a concrete cast of skulls. Whereas on this one, I think maybe just to have it a little bit different, I may actually have it as actual skulls, like embedded in the concrete. As you can see here, all the wires and things coming in and out of the skulls. I'll paint all the wires as well. So first, I want to do the base coat of the is it Ushabti bone, but bleach bone if you've got the old colour. Yeah, we'll see how we go from there. I don't know whether I'm going to do every single skull. I may do just the downright skulls, these ones here and here. I may do them and keep them as skulls, but obviously I don't want to do every single skull as a skull because not everyone would be. Some would be a cast of the concrete. So we'll have a look and we'll see how we go. Right, as you can see, I've done all the bone. I've done all the skulls and things around the side here. I decided just to do these skulls for the simple fact that doing all the skulls would just make it too random. It'd draw your eye to too many things. So it's just nice to keep it simple, but simple but effective, I suppose. Just to do these skulls on the pillars, I suppose, to a certain degree. Excuse me. I've left these skulls like a concrete colour because obviously these could be cast in the concrete, whereas these skulls could be like physically placed inside the concrete while the concrete's still wet. I've done the skulls around this side as well. Obviously done this panel here. It obviously looks a bit messy at the minute, but it will be obviously got to be inked and things like that. And I'm not bothered with all the cables and wires because obviously they will be done last. So which will bring me now to probably the inking stage. Now I could do the cables and wires on the model, obviously not in this part, but more like, you know, in the door and some of the buttons and things in the door. But I've decided not to, because obviously it's easier just to do the inking, because when I start to do the wires, I can then do the wires in this bit, wires and cables in this bit, rather than, you know, do the wires and cables now, do the inking, and then come back to do more wires and cables, because it's just you know, it's just too fiddly really. So I shall do the inking now, and what I'm going to use is I shall just use some brown ink. It's old school Games Workshop brown ink, just to get it used, and I shall just quickly put a little bit on my palette. Not too much, because it's there's not too many obviously not too many things to go on the not too much ink, sorry, to go on the skulls really. I will water it down just slightly. Yeah, probably just a little bit more, I think, just so it's a little bit more pliable, with the water in it. That'll do. Okay, I'll do this this panel here. Let's see if we can't zoom in here just to get a better look at the panel. There we go. So yeah, if we do this one here. Now all I've done is I've just got a load of brown ink on my brush, and I'm just literally going to go over the entire I suppose piece of concrete with this. I'll layer it on quite thick, because obviously the concrete bit behind it, I want to get some of the brown ink on that just to show a bit more weathering, because obviously it's a lot easier to do like that really, rather than just do the ink bit and then have to worry about, oh, I've gone, you know, put the brown on the back bit. Make sure all the skulls, the eyes of the skulls are all filled in. It's that, because obviously the eyes of the skulls are literally going to be the focal point for the skull. Yeah, that's about it really. As a gaming standard, obviously, you know, you don't even have to ink it. You just leave it as it is. But inking is literally, you know, to ink this entire model will probably be about a 5-minute job, so it's worth doing. It just gives it that little bit of you know, extra detail. I will ink literally every single skull on this model with the brown ink, and then yeah, so we shall come back after I've done all the inking. Right, and as you can see, we've done all of the brown ink. I've just gone over all the skulls. Both levels, top and bottom. So yeah, just gone over, like I say, gone over the brown ink. The other things I've done is the points on top. Obviously I did them with tin bits earlier on. I went over them with the brown ink as well, just to you know, thicken out the colour a little bit. Right, next we're going to do the not bolt gun metal, sorry, the Nuln oil. Now the Nuln oil is going to go over all the metal apart from the floor, the metal flooring. So this bit here basically. So it's not going to go on there. So the metal which I'm on about is all the downright supports. So like this bit here, that bit, you know, these on the little reinforced steel that I've done jutted out, on the chains, obviously these chains here, these vent pipes here, they're going to Nuln oil them as well. Once I've done all of the Nuln oil, I am also going to do the flooring in the what's it called again? Armour Wash, my old Armour Wash ink. Like I said before, it is similar to Null Noir, but it's actually darker. So it's more of a black ink rather than it just being a more watered down ink. So what I'm going to do is I shall crack on with the inking, and I shall get back as soon as I have as soon as I've done all the inking. Right, as you can see, I've done all of my brown ink, obviously around the skulls. All the skulls have been done on both sides. Yeah, both sides of the model, all the skulls have been brown inked. I've made sure I've gone over them quite heavily, so obviously the brown ink goes in all the recesses. I've also done the Null Oil on the metal struts. It just sets it out really quite really well. The Null Oil, it's probably one of my most used paints for it. Definitely my most used ink. With my other armour, my Lunar Wolves, I use that pretty much on every model. So I will do a painting guide for them when I come round to doing them. So that's all. All the Null Oil's done. All the brown ink's done. All the Armour Wash is also done on the levels. So on this level, that level, and the top level. Now, because it was a lot of ink, the old style ink, so the Armour Wash and the brown ink, take a long time to dry. The new style ink, so the Null Oil, dried quite quick, a lot quicker than the other inks. So I'm still some of the brown ink is still a little bit wet. So rather than just sit round and twiddle my fingers, I decided to paint the wood section. So I've done all the levels of the wood. I've painted underneath as well, just in case you get underneath the model. If you want to look underneath the model, you can see that it is painted, just to give that extra diversity of the 3 dimension of the model. I've just noticed now that I have actually missed a bit. So I'm just opening my Catachan Brown, which is what I painted the model, the wood in, and just going to paint this bit here against the side of the wood. That will be inked as well. Now there's no need to be delicate really with the painting, things that you don't mind just slapping the paint on. Obviously I don't mind just slapping the paint on this wood because it's going to be inked anyway. So now it's a case of literally making sure that all the ink's dry, because there's nothing worse than painting over something if the ink's not dry and you end up dragging the ink everywhere where you don't want it to go, which is a real pain in the arse. Waiting for the brown to dry for the this wood, the wooden beams, because once that's dry I will then ink that as well. So really we're not too far off the final stage really. Like I say, I will be inking this brown very, very shortly. Once that's inked, I will do the dry brushing on the skulls. So all these skulls here, the side skulls. And then on the final, or second to final stage, I will finish off the metalwork, which will be the gold and the brass, or the bronze, should I say. The reason why I usually leave the metal till last is because it's almost like a finishing touch, unless you want to weather something, obviously, which weathering is the final stage. But I've always liked to leave the weathering right at the end, and doing all the metals on the buildings, especially, obviously not on models, but on the buildings especially, leave them last. After I've done the weathering, I will be doing the base. But I always like to leave the base last because I'm not sure on how I'm going to finish it, because obviously it's definitely going to be grey because it's going to match my gaming mat, but I don't know whether I want to do pools of blood in it. I don't know whether I want to do globules of oil, mud, stains, things like that. Obviously with this model I've got the drop pod in it, so I'm going to have to paint that. I'm not going to bother doing a tutorial on how I'm painting the drop pod, because I'm not too sure on how I'm going to paint it myself yet. Whether I should do it, I thought about doing it Blood Angels. One of the guys I play, he's got a Blood Angels army, so I thought about doing it a Blood Angels theme, just a little bit of a little bit of rivalry there between us two. I thought about doing it Emperor's Children, World Eaters, Sons of Horus, or Death Guard colours, because I do play quite a bit of Heresy, obviously with my Lunar Wolves, so it'd be quite good to do it as a Heresy colour. I could do it with my Lunar Wolves colours, for the simple fact that I could have lost a drop pod earlier on in the battle, or like a preemptive skirmish where possibly my commander could have sent a drop pod down and it crash landed. So it'd be quite nice. I may actually do that, Lunar Wolves, thinking about it. So yeah, so we shall come back to when I actually get round to waiting for this, waiting for all the inks to dry.